Hey everybody, it's Gordy with Arkansas Preparedness Network coming at you this evening. I wanted to do a video, and hopefully I'm going to be able to keep it rather short, but I want to talk about doing long-term food storage on a budget. Not everybody can buy a big pallet of freeze-dried food or a $10,000 food dehydrator or whatever, so most of us have a budget that we have set for preparedness supplies, so forth and so on, so this will help you keep in that. I actually did this presentation, at least to some degree, at the extravaganza back in June. And this is, I want to talk about rice and beans. You know, everybody hears all the preppers talking about, well, you got to have rice and beans, you got to have rice and beans. Well, why are rice and beans so important? Because together, rice and beans, or beans and any other grain, corn, things like that, like beans and cornbread, rice and beans, together they make up a complete protein which provides each of the amino acids that the body cannot make by itself. So if you're in a hard time situation and you're resorting to your emergency food, you need to make sure that it's going to nourish your body as best as possible. Now, I'm not saying rice and beans is going to be the only thing that you're going to eat. Let's hope not. It could be, but if it is, then at least it's something that's somewhat nourishing. Hopefully everybody is going to be supplementing that with other things, and we'll get into that in a minute. So if 1 pound of rice is 1,650 calories, now this is 1 pound of dried rice, is 1,650 calories. 1 pound of dried pinto beans is 1,550 calories. So if you take a half a pound of rice and a half a pound of beans, that's 1 pound of food for you in a dire ration per day. That's 1,600 calories for one person in one day. Now, if you're having to chop wood and stuff like that, that's not going to sustain you. If you're just staying inside and feeding the fire to stay warm, then this will be enough. Hopefully, you know, if you're like me, you've got a little extra stored away. What is it TJ calls it? Yes, TJ, I'm calling you out. It's stored calories. I forget what he calls it. Maybe he'll post something down there and explain to us what it is. But anyway, that's why rice and beans are a big thing, because they provide, together they provide the complete protein that is all the amino acids that our body cannot produce on its own. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can do this. If you can afford to spend about 150 or 160 bucks, you can go buy 100 pounds of rice and 100 pounds of beans and 6 of these buckets from Home Depot or Lowe's or whoever your preferred deal is. I prefer Home Depot because if you can see in there that black, that is a gasket. The Lowe's buckets don't have the gasket in there. I like the Home Depot buckets because they do have the gasket. They both cost about the same. So you're also going to need some of these Mylar bags and some oxygen absorbers. This is one 5-gallon Mylar bag. It folds flat. You know, it's just a big rectangle, and to give you an idea how big it is, and it's open at one end and sealed on the other end. That has been kind of opened up and put in this bucket, and I have already put a bunch of beans in here because I know you guys didn't want to sit here long enough for me to dump in 34 bags of these beans. But to show you, this is what I did. This is bag number 34. That's 34 pounds of beans in that bucket. And this is what these are, because I don't want to get all caught up on just having pinto beans or anything. You get tired of eating the same thing over and over again, and then you just get to where you don't want to eat, and then you end up starving to death. So mix things up. So there are a lot of ways that you can do this. Now, I can't get the red beans because I like red beans and rice. Actually, those of you that have come to the last 2 events have probably tasted my red beans and rice, and hopefully you think they're pretty decent. My wife and I are pretty fond of them. So we like the red beans and rice. My wife is also very fond of lima beans, Ford Hook style lima beans, the mature lima beans. So that's a, what is that? That's a 2-pound bag. That cost about $4. This is a 4-pound bag of Pinto Beans from Walmart. This is just great value brand. Right at $4. This is a 5-pound bag of rice. I like the parboiled rice because it doesn't stick. Store what you eat, right? That's about $3.50. So hopefully you can figure out, oh, and these right here, these cost, I think, $1.14 each. So every time you go to the store and you're buying groceries, just grab a bag and throw it in your cart. Now, there's one thing that I want to stress. This is very important, so everybody please pay attention. When you're doing this, it's going to take you a month or 2 months or whatever to get enough stored up to fill a 5-gallon bucket, because you're going to want around 30 or 35 pounds in there. So when you get those bags, you need to put those bags in your freezer for at least 3 days. The reason is that there are mealworms usually have laid eggs on those grain. Even though they get washed before they get bagged and all that, there's still going to be some eggs in there. And this is what happens if, let's see, can you see all that meal that's in there? Yeah, I think you can see all that meal. This is a bag of, this is an older bag. You see this one's red, but it's the same. It's the Great Value small red beans. And the mealworms, because I didn't stick them in the freezer, the mealworms got in there and got to them. So these are going to end up going to the chickens instead of in a bucket. So put them in the freezer for 3 days, at least 3-4 days. Then take them out, store them on your shelf or whatever. Then when you get enough, because being in the freezer for 3 days will kill the eggs of any bugs that might be in there. And then when you store them for long term, you're going to try and get as much of the oxygen out of there as possible to ensure that there are no more bugs in there. If they do, they won't live very long and they won't eat much of your food. So, we've covered different ways to do this, to come up with a bucket of food that you can store. If it's $5 at a time, the bucket and the lid together I think is about $6.50. I get the Mylar bags. I get 10 Mylar bags, and they come with 10 oxygen absorbers. I think these are 2,000 cc oxygen absorbers. They come with 10 of these, and they're vacuum sealed when they come, all 10 of them together. 10 oxygen absorbers and 10 Mylar bags for about 21 or 22 bucks from Amazon. That's delivered to my house. So everything involved in this can be done for less than 25 bucks. So if you can do $25 a month and just trudge away and do this, then you can put away a bucket every month or two, or maybe even 3 months to get you, depending on how expensive the beans are. Because quite frankly, these are not that inexpensive. That's over $1 a pound. And like I said, the lima beans are the most expensive. And this is what I actually did at the extravaganza. 2 pounds cost me $4. That's $2 a pound. But these are my wife's favorite beans. So, happy wife, happy life, right? So, that's stuff that you can put together to put in a bucket. Now, before I get into showing you how to actually secure this bucket, I want to talk about a couple of other options. You've already seen the lima beans and the pinto beans. And I'm going to show you right up here. Hopefully I can get close enough that you can see. There's a date here of January 15th, 2018. And these are lima beans. These are vacuum sealed bags. And this one here is pinto beans from June 3rd, 2018. So every now and then when I go to the store, I buy a little bit extra, and I may vacuum seal some so that I've got a few that are handy. And I like to put some in buckets so that I've got plenty stored away for in case things really get bad. But this keeps the bugs out as well, vacuum sealing. And to keep things a little interesting, this right here is some 15, I don't know if you can, there we go, maybe you can see that. This is just a bag of 15 bean soup. And you can't really tell, but the little flavor packet is in there too. And I took the instructions for it and all that, cut that out of the bag, and I vacuum sealed that. Now, the vacuum seal that I use, I got this, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years ago. This is a Food Saver Game Saver, and you can get some that are around 75, 80 bucks. This one here, I think I paid about 120 bucks for, because this one has a 10-year warranty, and it's designed to be a little heavier use, as the name implies, game saver. It's for people that hunt deer and larger animals that may have to package an entire animal, and this thing can stand up to constant use for an hour or two at a time. Y'all excuse me a second, I'm going to take a little nip of Grandpa's cough syrup. So, we've covered all, well, nope, I've got one more option here for you. Again, Walmart. Now, you probably won't find this stuff at the store unless you order it and have it shipped to the store to pick up. But usually this kind of stuff, they want to ship to your house. They don't want to send it to the store. But if you go to Walmart.com and go to the grocery section, they have an emergency food section. There are all kinds of good values in there. This is a number 10 can of butter powder. Okay, it's not real butter, but hey, it's something to make my rice taste a little bit better after I've been eating it for a week at a time, right? You can get dehydrated onions. They have all kinds of stuff. You can buy prepackaged flour if you want to, all that kind of good stuff. Each one of these cans, depending on the product, may cost anywhere from 8 bucks to 15 bucks or whatever. And I think if you order at least $35, I could be wrong, but I think it used to be 60 bucks, but now they're trying to compete with Amazon. So I think if you order $35 worth of product at one time, they'll ship it for free. Now, because there's a Walmart near almost everybody, you're going to have to pay sales tax on it, but it gets delivered to your house. So don't forget to do something like this to mix things up so you're not just eating rice and beans. Get some dehydrated onions, there's like some potato slices, all kinds of stuff. Walmart.com, groceries, emergency food, go check it out. Pretty good values in there. All right, I think we've covered, the different options that my wife and I do for long-term food storage. Now, you saw me dump the last 2 bags of beans in here, so there's 34 pounds of beans in here, and I wanted to go over that because we were talking about calories earlier. So if we're talking about a pound of rice, well, a half pound of rice and a half pound of beans, that's about a pound of food per day at 1,600 calories. Barely enough to sustain you, but if you got chickens, you got eggs, if you can go hunting, maybe get you some sort of game animal, or if you raise sheep, goats, whatever, to supplement foraging wild plants, whatever you may have, whatever you may have growing in your garden, or canning food in jars. You can supplement your diet and easily get that up to 2,000 calories a day. Now, that's basically a pound of food per day when you store it in a bucket like that. So basically 1 bucket is about 1 month's worth of food for one person on a tight ration. So when you're looking at your food storage, if you've got 6 buckets back there, that's 6 months worth of food, emergency food, for one person. So if it's 2 people, that's only 3 months worth of food. If it's 4 people, that's only a month and a half worth of food for 4 people. So keep that in mind when you're trying to do something like this. But 1 bucket roughly equates to 1 month's worth of ration food per person. And again, if you wanted to do it 100 pounds at a time, if you've got a Sam's Club membership, Costco membership, something like that, you can get 50-pound, 100-pound bags of beans and rice and get a much better value. And like I said, if I do 6 buckets at a time with 100 pounds of rice and 100 pounds of beans, it ends up costing me about 150 bucks. And that gives me 6 months worth of emergency food for one person. So, now I want to talk about how I do this. Now, I told you that I get the Mylar bags and the oxygen absorbers in a pack of 10. I have the vacuum sealer. So, before I did this, I pulled 1 out and vacuum sealed it because I don't want it to be exposed to the air any more than it absolutely has to. If you do not have a vacuum sealer, you can get the smallest canning jar that you've got and stuff these things in there, the ones that you're not using. Stuff them in there, make sure that lid is down there tight. They will absorb the oxygen that is in that jar, and then they'll quit, and they'll still be active. And usually in the package there's a little piece of paper that's purple or blue or something like that, and as long as it doesn't turn black, usually is what happens, then it's still okay and they're still good. So for this demonstration, I pulled one out and vacuum sealed it, vacuum sealed the other ones back up so that I can keep these in as good a shape as possible because I want to preserve my food as best I can. So let's get back to this. I've got my oxygen absorber, my Mylar bag, and you notice this one here is quite a bit shorter than this one here because I've already trimmed it, and I'll explain why. But I trim about 3 inches off the top because it makes it a little easier to seal and for me to get all the oxygen out, and I'm going to show you how I do that. Now, before I show you how I do it, I'm going to show you the way that most people that you see out there on the internet will tell you to do it. And it will work, but it is not the best way to get all of the oxygen out. You can take your bag and fold it over, and you can take just a scrap piece of 2x4 or whatever and set it up here, and you can get this up here and take a regular household iron. You see it's just a household iron, and you can iron about 2/3 of that closed because all it takes is heat. Just put this on high, no water in there, you don't want to steam it. Just put it on high. If you've got a really good iron, you may not want quite all the way high. You may want like medium high. Seal it about 2/3 of the way. Put your oxygen absorber in there. Try and squeeze out as much air as you can, and then finish sealing it up. Now, like I said, I don't like using that method because, as you can see, there's still quite a bit of air in it. Well, maybe you can't tell as well as I can, but there's still quite a bit of air in there that I would prefer to get out. Now, another way to do that is you can use a vacuum. If you want to clean your vacuum attachment, most vacuums come where you can pull the hose off, and then they've got that little small thing to get down in the couch to get the popcorn and stuff that falls down in between the cushions. You can wash that thoroughly. Yeah, make sure your hands are clean and everything that you're doing here is clean. It doesn't have to be, completely sanitized or anything, but you want to make sure you wash your hands and all that kind of good stuff. And you can seal this thing down, put your oxygen absorber in there, and then you can take that vacuum tube, turn your vacuum on, and kind of stick that tube in there a little bit, and that will draw all of that air out and give you a very mild vacuum seal. It won't be near as tight a vacuum seal as that. It won't come anywhere close to being that tight. However, if you get as much of that oxygen out of there as you can with your vacuum cleaner and then get it sealed up with that oxygen absorber in there, that oxygen absorber will finish pulling that oxygen out and it will end up drawing down nearly as tight as that. So what I do, because I don't like using the household iron and the board method, is I use my hair straightener. You see how straight my hair is? That's because I use this thing all the time. So, but I use this hair straightener to do this because it allows me to get much more of the air out. So I'm going to turn my back to you so I can go ahead and get this thing partly sealed up, and then I'll be right back. Okay, and I told you that I try to do about 2/3 of it, so I'm going to start down here. Let me get my cord out of the way. And I'm just going to pinch that on there and then just start pulling it over this way. And then we'll do that a couple of times, make sure that that's good and sealed. And I hope you can hear me with my back turned. Alright, I've got 2/3 of that dude sealed up pretty good. I've still got space over here to get my oxygen absorber in there. So I want to make sure that my beans are kind of flat and level down in there. Then I'm going to go ahead and take my scissors, the same scissors that I cut the top of that off with, and I'm going to open this vacuum seal bag here and take this oxygen absorber out. And I'm going to stick it right down in this little hole that I left here and get it down in there and get it to lay flat. And then I'm going to push as much of this air out of here as I possibly can. And finish sealing this bag the other way. All right, so hopefully you can see that. I pushed as much of that air out as I can, and the bag is completely sealed up. Now, if something happens and I accidentally poke a hole in it or something like that, that 3 inches that I cut off, I can cut a piece of that out and make a little patch and use my iron. If I have to use the household iron or if I want to use my hair straightener or whatever, then I can make that stick to that and seal that hole back up. So don't throw that away immediately. Now, I forgot to get a magic marker. Let me pause this for a second because I can't find my magic markers. Okay, I'm back. I've got a magic marker. Now, why do you need a magic marker? Because I just put, wait, what did I put in this bucket? Oh, that's right, small red beans. And I also probably need to put the date that they were packaged on here too, right? So I'm going to write on here that these are small red beans, and because I don't keep a calendar in my head, I'm going to look, I'm going to cheat. Today is August the 2nd of 2018. Hopefully you can see that. So I marked the bag because if something happens to the bucket, the bag may still be intact. And then I can take and fold that up and put my lid on. And then I'm going to write on here the same thing. Actually on the outside I put my initials and then the initials of what's in there. So I'm going to put GM and then it's going to be SRB, and then I'm going to put today's date. And I'm going to put it on the top, and I'm also going to put it on the side here. So hopefully I have covered everything. If you've got any questions about any of that stuff, hit me up in the comments, and I will try and answer your questions. Hopefully this video hasn't been too long, and hopefully at least some of you folks will find this quite educational, and this will help you get better on the path on a tight budget of getting some long-term food storage. All right, with that, I'll say good night, God bless, and I'll catch you next time.